every meeting has to have a clear purpose. Just the one sentence of why are we here? Every meeting should have a clear agenda. And I mean, when you're sending out the meeting request, what's the purpose? What's the outcome? What's the agenda, right? Here's the 6 things we're covering. Here's the order we're going to talk about them in. And here's how many minutes we're going to spend on each agenda item. And that allows people to say yes or no to attending the meeting. It also gives them clarity around any prep they might have to do. Every meeting should start exactly on time. It's just not fair to the people who show up on time to start the meeting late. When we were all kids, at some point, we took our son or our daughter and we sent them off to Little League baseball or soccer or dance. And unless you were a really horrible human being as a parent, or unless our parents were really horrible human beings, they probably taught us the basics, right? I remember when my dad sent me off to Little League baseball, he taught me how to hold the bat and how to swing it terribly, but I still understood it, and taught me how to throw a ball and how to catch a ball. I at least had the basic understanding of how to throw and catch and swing. And now I sucked, but I had the basics. But if we didn't teach our kid the basics of baseball, they'd go off to Little League and they'd come back and they'd say baseball sucks. And the reality is baseball doesn't suck. Johnny sucks at baseball. And I was thinking about meetings the same way, that the only reason our employees ever say that meetings suck is because they've never been given the base level of training on how to run highly effective meetings, nor have they ever been given the base level of training on how to show up and attend and participate in meetings. So considering that every single employee that works for you either runs meetings or shows up at meetings, it makes sense to give them the base level of training on how to run highly effective meetings. So I say, buy them a copy of the book Meetings Suck, have them all read the book Meetings Suck. It's one of the modules in the Invest in Your Leaders course, but at least have them read the book so they have the base level of training. For me, a meeting is any time you have 2 or more people on a phone call, over Zoom, or in person. That's a meeting. For me, every meeting has to have a clear purpose. Just the one sentence of why are we here, and putting that into the meeting request. So if you're sending off a meeting request to ask people to come to a meeting, make sure that you explain what the purpose of that actual meeting is. A meeting should also have a maximum of 3 outcomes, like the 3 big things we're going to work through or get done in that meeting. Chances are, if you have more than 3 things that you're covering, you probably could split it up and have 2 separate meetings with 2 slightly different groups of people that really need to be there. It tends to be that as soon as you start covering 4 or 5 things, some of the people don't need to be there for all of the things. So split them up and run shorter meetings and have the clear purpose and outcomes. Every meeting should have a clear agenda. And I mean, when you're sending out the meeting request, what's the purpose? What's the outcome? What's the agenda, right? Here's the 6 things we're covering. Here's the order we're going to talk about them in. And here's how many minutes we're going to spend on each agenda item. And that allows people to say yes or no to attending the meeting. It also gives them clarity around any prep they might have to do. Every meeting should start exactly on time. It's just not fair to the people who show up on time to start the meeting late. So even for our CO Alliance calls, today's call was to start at 9 o'clock Pacific time. We started at 9 o'clock Pacific time. I'm well aware that a couple people are going to show up 30 seconds late, 2 minutes late, 4 minutes late, whatever, life goes on. The call was for 9 o'clock. We started at 9 o'clock. Do that for all of your meetings as well. I've never seen an Olympic athlete yet who can run into an event and go, sorry, I'm late, right? When the swim race starts at 9:10, it starts at 9:10. When the 100 meters starts at 10:05, it starts at 10:05. Nobody's going to sit around waiting and say, oh, that sprinter's not here yet. Let's just hold off. They're just warming up. Let's get ready for them. Don't do the same thing in your meetings as well. But there's a reason why people show up late for meetings. The reason is that we tend to run all of our meetings back to back. So what I like putting in place as the system is every phone call, every Zoom call, every in-person meeting stops 5 minutes prior to the scheduled ending time. So if I run a meeting from 9 o'clock till 9:30, it ends at 9:25. And that gives people a built-in 5-minute buffer to walk down the hall, talk to their assistant, get a cup of coffee, and start the next meeting exactly on time. And what I like doing is starting the meetings and starting the phone calls exactly on time, saying, just a reminder, we start all of our meetings on time to show that we respect everybody. We'll finish the meeting 5 minutes prior to the scheduled ending time, so I'll be on time. Everybody review the agenda. Okay, let's go. So that basic rule of start on time, stop 5 minutes early is really powerful. I also like booking meetings for half the time that we first think about booking them for. So if you're going to say book an hour meeting, book it for 30 minutes. You're going to get it done in less time. If you think about booking something for a day, book it for half a day. You'll control the idle chatter. You'll have a moderator, a parking lot timekeeper. You'll be able to get stuff done because you're actually forcing that restraint. I think it's Parkinson's law that says that work expands to fill the space and time that we give it. So when you give people too much time, of course, they'll take an hour to talk about something that could have been done in 30 minutes. So one of the reasons people complain about meetings is they go on for too long. Give it a shorter container so they get it done in less time. 3 roles need to be played in every meeting, even if it's a 2-person meeting. Somebody has to be the moderator to make sure that we stay on track. Somebody has to be the timekeeper to make sure that we stay on each agenda item and we don't go over time. And somebody has to keep control of the parking lot, which is where you write down the stuff we want to talk about that's not part of the agenda, so that you can actually talk about it later, but you don't hijack the agenda in that discussion. It's kind of like, hey, that's a great idea. Let's put it on the parking lot and talk about it offline, or talk about it at the end of the meeting if we still have time. But those roles, the moderator and timekeeper in a parking lot being played, really help you have highly effective meetings inside your business as well. I also really like to think that if an employee comes to me and says, hey, I saw the purpose and outcome and agenda, and I don't think I need to be coming to that meeting, that should be a celebration. Like, awesome. Stay at your desk, stay at your job, whatever you're doing, and keep working on those projects that you perceive as higher value. We'll take care of doing what we need to do in the meeting. Don't force people to come to a meeting because they might have a different role or a different focus or something that's going to give a higher return than them sitting in on a meeting. And if you do invite people into the meetings, make sure you get them to talk. So one of the things that I like to do to get the quieter people, the more amiable people to talk, is to throw ideas up on a whiteboard. Either put Post-it notes up on a wall, use the tool like Stormboard, which is an online tool, have them write their ideas into Slack or into the Zoom chat so the ideas are getting shared, and then you can read out those ideas later. If you're the person hosting the meeting, or if you're the person booking the meeting, and you have people coming to that meeting that aren't talking, it's your job to get them to talk, or why did you invite them in the first place? People don't want to come to a meeting where there's discussions and debate and not being able to share. It's different if it's an info share, right? If you're inviting people to a meeting so that they can listen to one people explaining stuff, that's different. But if the discussion topics involve discussion or debate, make sure that you get everybody in the room to be a part of that discussion, or split it up into separate meetings so that the people who are there can actually discuss and debate. Jeff Bezos has a great rule inside of Amazon. It's called the 2 pizza rule. And he used to say that he would only invite people to a meeting if the sum of the people that came could be fed by 2 pizzas. Don't invite 28 people to a meeting because there's no way 2 pizzas can feed them and you're not going to get it all done. So these are some of the good base rules. I also like finishing all the meetings by saying who's doing what by when. So just going around the room and getting each of the people that came to what they're working on, or when they're actually going to be doing the work that they said they're going to be doing. So like I said at the beginning, I think it's highly effective for all of your employees to read the book Meeting Suck. This is the original cover, but I would get a copy of it for every employee, have them listen to it, have them read it, and have them do a 5-minute book report on what they learned. A couple of things that we also cover in the book Meeting Suck is that the reason that we run meetings is to remove some of the miscommunication that happens via chat or via text. So the reason that we have meetings over the phone, over Zoom, or in person is to massively reduce the misinformation that happens because of Slack and email and text and SMS. We piss people off because we write things down way more than pissing them off by coming to a meeting. So if you run highly effective meetings, no one's going to be bummed that they're there. And you'll also remove the amount of conflict in your company because you're not creating conflict with a lot of the written word. I'm going to talk about some of the actual meetings that all of our companies need. And by the way, these are our meetings that your company needs, even if you've only got 20 employees. All of you need to have an annual planning meeting. This is when the leadership team, the 6 or 7 people on your true leadership team, are sitting down to come up with the goals for next year, to relook at the vivid vision together, to discuss the strategy, to look at your SWOT analysis, and to figure out the plan to get to those goals, the plan to grow the people, the plans that we're going to be working towards, and what we're going to be buffering ourselves against as we're executing. But that annual planning meeting should be happening in September or October, where you're getting the leadership team to set the goals and the strategy for the company that'll start 3 months later. That allows you to go back into your budgeting and planning processes when you can figure out your hiring plans, figure out your budgets, and then you can have your budget locked and loaded by the end of November. So you've got a full month to revisit the strategy, revisit the plan, revisit the budget, revisit the hiring plan, so that January 1st, you hit the ground running. So that annual planning meeting is really, really critical. It's also critical to have the quarterly planning meeting where your leadership team goes off-site for a half day to a day to revisit the plan, and each business area comes up with the top 3 projects for their area for the quarter that they're going to focus on getting done. I also like each individual in the company to commit to the top 3 projects that they're going to do for the quarter, so that we know that what people are working on are aligned with the organization's goals and objectives. We know that the top 3 projects that each business area is working on are aligned with the goals and objectives. And you can also help remove any obstacles if you see them coming. And you also know what everybody's working on, so some of the interdependencies that are coming as well. I also like a regular strategy meeting. Now, when we were growing 1-800-GOT-JUNK, our annual growth rate was 100% revenue growth. So we grew 6 consecutive years in a row with 100% revenue growth. We went from 2 million to 106 million in 6 years. We were running strategy meetings every month where the leadership team got together every Thursday, or the third Thursday of the month. And we talked about stuff that was at least 6 to 12 months out on the calendar to just bring. We did it once a month, but I think worst case scenario, at least once a quarter if you're growing slower, like if you're growing between 10 and 30% a year, once a quarter, your leadership team should be meeting to talk about, what if we did acquisitions? What if there was a recession? What if a competitor came into this space? What if we pivoted? What if we added better IT integration? And it's just putting time in your calendar to think strategically, to think at a different level, to think about what your company would have to do differently if you were 10 times bigger. Strategy is stuff that if you don't make time for, it blindsides you. I remember years ago, I was at the main 5-day TED conference, and I was talking to a guy who on his name tag, it said he was the CEO. His business was at the top of the World Trade Center. And I remember when his business lost the top 2 floors and lost most of the key executives were killed that day. And I was talking to him, I said, how did you guys even survive this as a company? How did your company even survive? He said that we had the plans in place and the systems in place for if there was a catastrophic scenario like this, that we could be back up and running the very next day. That CEO had dropped his kid off at kindergarten and was walking back to the office when the first plane hit his building. Had they not had that strategy meeting to talk about those kinds of scenarios, their business would have been out of the business. I also like having what we called our war meeting. It was our weekly action review. And that was when the leadership team, almost like the L10 meetings, is when your leadership team sits down and talks about what's going well, what's not going well, what you're working on over the next week, where you're stuck, and clearing any of the big issues that need help from the rest of the business area. But having a really strong L10 meeting or a war meeting or some leadership team meeting that your leadership team talks about the core projects on a weekly basis, helps unstick each other, and helps drive the business forward. It's critical to have that in place as well. I also like making sure that each employee had their weekly top 3 goals set as well, so that every employee would commit in writing to the top 3 things they were going to get done this week, so that the leadership team could make sure that they were driving towards their quarterly objectives and that we had people working on the right stuff. So it wasn't to micromanage them. It was to make sure that they were aligned, that we knew how to coach them, we knew how to develop them, we could help align them, we could help remove obstacles for them. But it was all about them knowing what their top 3 goals were for the next week as well. We also put in place our weekly coaching meeting. The weekly coaching meeting was time for each leader to coach the direct reports, and it was a balance of 3 things. It was direction, development, and support. So I cover this in the book Meeting Suck. I also cover it in the Invest in Your Leadership course, how to run proper one-on-one coaching sessions. The direction is making sure that the person reporting to you is working on the right stuff, because sometimes they get sidelined or they get distracted or they work on busy work or they work on stuff that isn't giving us the highest leverage. So making sure they're working in the right direction. Secondly, is to give them any skill development they might need to help support them on some of the core projects that they're working on. And then third is to give them the emotional support in their lives and in their business day to day so that they feel cared for. It's not to manage them. It's not to hold them accountable. It's almost as if you're helping them and giving them the direction, the development, and support. And that weekly coaching session is critical. We also like giving all of our employees to set their daily top 3. So right now with my team, we actually set our weekly top 5. So on Monday, we commit in Slack to our top 5 projects for the week that we're going to get done. Each of those projects are measurable, so we know for sure if we're going to get them or not. And then we share last week's prior top 5, and if we hit or miss them, and if we miss them, why we missed them. And that regular pulse of setting your daily or weekly top 3 or top 5 drives through towards your meetings, and it really helps your business be more effective. We also ran the daily huddle. The daily huddle was something that was a 7-minute all-company stand-up meeting. We're going to have a breakout talking about them later. But the idea with the daily huddle is to get all of your employees together to share good news, share any missing systems, cover the numbers that you're tracking on a daily basis for that quarter that are helping you towards your goals, and make sure that you're actually staying connected as a team. We ran our daily huddles every day, starting at 10:55 and ending at 11:02. We picked up roughly 11 o'clock in the morning time slot because there's 2 points in the day when your energy level drops, around 11 in the morning and around 2 in the afternoon. So by running huddle right around 11, it boosted everybody's energy up. It was mandatory. All of these meetings were in everybody's calendars. 2 minutes before 10:55, an alarm went off and everybody realized, oh, huddle starting in 2 minutes. They would stop what they're doing. They'd walk down to the huddle area. 1-800-GOT-JUNK has run a daily huddle at the head office every single day now for 21 years. They've never missed a daily huddle. And they're even now doing it over Zoom as the team is remote. People call in over Zoom and they're running daily huddles that way. And in our franchise partners, and we actually have a second in command for one of our franchisees. They're doing $11 million in revenue. One of the franchisees, he's actually now a member of the CEO Alliance. They do daily huddles as well. So it's a really powerful system to put it inside of your business. This is an example of what daily huddle starts to look like as you scale up the organization. And then in that daily huddles, you're tracking any of the metrics, you're tracking any of the key projects. So those are some of my thoughts just around meetings and around the types of meetings. But I think it's important that you think about how do we actually train our employees so they know how to run meetings, they know how to actually attend them and participate in them. And I think that's where you get a lot of your leverage from as well.